Hello, patrons. It feels like it has been a little while since I have talked to you like this, done a video. I tried to do a video last month. I was working on that poster, the Breath of the Wild kind of poster, and so I recorded the whole thing to do a time-lapse video of me drawing it. However, I went to go and edit it, and every time I tried to export it from Premiere, like these big chunks in the middle would just be like blank, like it was like pink, and I could not figure out why it wasn't exporting properly. So anyway, I wasn't able to provide that video last month, so this month I decided let me just go back to a quick Q&A video. But first, to catch you up on what's been going on with me, I am actually in my new office now, finally, after longer than I'd like to admit. I finally finished this portion of the house, my office, to the point where I could start moving in, which also, just to kind of refresh you, the other room that I was using was supposed to be the bedroom for my 2-year-old, and so he hadn't had a bedroom for, forever. So I was able to finally move out of there, so that did two things for us. Obviously, I get my new office, and he finally gets a bedroom, which is sort of a big step forward for us in terms of getting this house finished and having a little bit of breathing room. So I'm in my new office. I'm still moving in, actually. I'm still setting everything up, moving my stuff in, figuring out where I'm going to put everything. So I'm not quite ready to, maybe next month or so I'll give you a quick tour. But yeah, so I'm finally in here. So that's great. That's a thing checked off my to-do list. And now that this is done, I've been trying to spend, what little free time I have working on material for the books that I want to kickstart next year with the 3 collection books, Starcaster, Analog and D-Pad, and then just the general Control-Alt-Delete stuff. I've never ever been content to just take the stuff that's online and just throw it in a book and be done. Anytime I put a book together, I kind of want to add value to the book by adding a bunch of stuff that is exclusive to the book, so that if you're buying content, you're getting a little something extra as opposed to just what you've already gotten digitally online. So that's so I've been chipping away at that. I actually just posted a little preview of the Starcaster Chronicles. I'm doing a bunch of stuff for the Starcaster Chronicles. That's probably the one book that's getting the most custom content for it, because there's so much world building involved, backstory, this and that I can put in there. Some of it might come out through the story over time, but it's all information that I can put into the book, for the people that are really interested in that series. So I've been doing that, and then the Analog and D-Pad will have some extra stuff. I'll even include the old 3 original Analog and D-Pad comic books that from way back in the mid 2000s. It's so again, I'm trying to put together all this stuff. So hopefully early next year I'm ready to go. We can launch a Kickstarter, get these books printed, do that whole circus again with the Kickstarter. But anyway, speaking of Starcaster Chronicles, we actually have a couple Starcaster related questions this month. So let me get to those. Stefane asks, what have I decided about the Starcaster Chronicles? And I think what he means is because a little while back I pitched the possibility of changing up how we do that in order to get more Starcaster Chronicles out there, or at least on a more regular basis. And I had talked about potentially creating a Patron specifically for Starcaster Chronicles, which would help fund more artistic help, either just the colorist, or even going so far as to having someone pencil and ink the pages as well, with me just writing them, and then sort of putting out a few pages on a monthly basis in order to try and get as much out in a year as possible. And the answer to the question is I haven't forgotten about that, but I also haven't quite reached a decision yet. I have not quite gotten to the point where I'm ready to pull the trigger on changing the entire way that Starcaster works. Part of me wants to wait until I release this first book, so that I kind of have an idea of are there enough people interested in the Starcaster Chronicles that even though I pay out of pocket or whatever, over the course of many years to create the issues, when I collect them and put them into a book, do people buy it? Is that, will I see that money back, and then I can then reinvest that money into future issues? If it looks like doing it that way, the comic will pay for itself in a manner. that's information I want to have before I make any drastic changes. So I certainly would love to be writing Starcaster Chronicles on a more regular basis, like, even if it's just a steady drip throughout the year. I'm not sure. I don't feel like I could move Starcaster Chronicles to the forefront of what I do and just do that most of the time and still be able to make a living. I'm not really sure whether or not the audience is quite that big, but it's definitely not off the table, looking to see if we do have enough support to to arrange some sort of Patreon thing where we start manufacturing pages at a more regular clip. And then Seroquel asks, and this question actually came in literally as I was setting up for this video, so right under the wire there. But Seroquel asks, can you talk a bit about how you came up with the Starcaster Chronicles, what inspired it, and maybe where I see it going in the future? I can do a little bit of that, sure. So, the inspiration, how I came up with it was mostly that I kind of wanted to do like a sci-fi space adventure. And the inspiration was to a degree like Han Solo, and maybe a little bit of Malcolm Reynolds, that, just sort of like a space rogue with like a bit of a shady past that kind of skirts the law whilst trying to make his way through the galaxy, that sort of a thing. So, that was kind of what a story I was interested in telling. And so I sort of came up with, but there was a little bit of, that idea of what happens if you, a regular guy suddenly get thrust into the middle of like this galactic conquest or this galactic conflict and have to sort of navigate that. And so that was kind of the basis. And then also, of course, the fact that I wanted to do, the choose your own adventure type thing where the audience gets to help make decisions that guide the story. Do we take path A or path B? Which is something I had done previously. I dabbled with the Ethan McManus Space Archaeologist. So that was kind of like the original prototype. And then once I kind of saw how that worked and worked out a couple of the kinks, then I said, okay, I'd like to try that again with a slightly more serious, larger scale adventure. And then in terms of where I see it going, honestly, we have through these first 6 issues, we have literally just gotten into like the good stuff. Like the whole, like the first 5 issues, that arc was again about these elements colliding. Court and Naira, kind of crossing paths and trying to navigate their own goals here, where she has this feeling of like, I made a pledge and I have to protect this thing. I have to keep this out of the Drangleiax's hands. And then Court's saying like, oh, well, this, as the opportunist in him thinking, maybe I can make some money here, but also maybe there's like this underlying pull for him to also want to maybe do a little bit of good in the universe. And so that first 5 issues was really just about kind of, bringing them together and starting them on this journey to get to the Starcaster. And now that they have the Starcaster, that's where things are really going to explode, because Court has now found that he can't remove the Starcaster. He doesn't know how to use it, and yet he's been forced into the middle of this really big kind of conflict that's been brewing, between this empire that conquers space and this one federation, this one section of space that so far has held out and kept the Drangleiax at the borders. And so now that's all about to erupt, and so this is the part where like things are going to start to get like really kind of crazy and interesting, and we get to see how Court navigates that, whether or not he survives it, and what happens if he does, what happens if he doesn't. So I have ideas obviously about where things are going to go, but because I let the audience makes choices at certain crucial points, that all also has to stay very flexible. So it's more about I design this universe and I design the players in the universe, and then I really just have to let the characters kind of play in it and see what happens. But ideally, there's enough interest in it that we keep going for many more issues, and we get to kind of go on this whole big adventure and see how it all plays out. So that's my that's my hope for how it proceeds in the future. So that wraps up this video for November. We are obviously now right in the middle of the holidays, so this is crazy times. I don't know if it's crazy for you guys, but this is like such a stressful time of year for me, just because my family's all over the place and we gotta like drive here, drive there, bounce around. We got parties to go to and decorations to put up and this and that, and so it's pretty wild. So hopefully you guys aren't having too stressful of a holiday season. We just got to get through this this next month, and then things will slow down a little bit. I'm looking forward to keeping you guys in the loop about some of the things I'm working on. Again, more about the books, and then once the books are done, my next project after that is I've got a couple little tabletop games that I was hoping I might start dabbling with. Not to jump the gun here, but once I've put together basically a prototype of this first players-based tabletop game that I've kind of been designing, I'm going to need some play testers, and I'm going to be coming to you guys, seeing if you guys can help me with a little bit of play testing to kind of before we go full speed on that thing. So there's definitely some exciting things hopefully that I'm working on, free time permitting. So thank you guys so much for your continued support, and we will see you in December.